Hi there, it's Sasha from Coding Rooms here, and today we're talking about teaching computer science remotely during COVID. I'm joined by Joe Mazzone from the Davies Career and Technical High School in Lincoln, Rhode Island, and he's also the president of the Rhode Island CSTA chapter. So I'll let you introduce yourself, Joe.
Hi, everyone. I'm Joe Mazzone, and I teach at Davies Career and Technical High School in Rhode Island. And I'm really passionate about computer science education. I love working with educators. That's why I've been so excited about my involvement in CSTA. I like talking about best practices and tools and working together to really improve CS education. And I've been doing this for about 10 years. It's my 10th year teaching. So I have some experience under my belt to help people out more and to continue to collaborate.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us today. One other cool tidbit is that we have a webinar coming up that will actually be featured by Joe. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. So we're hoping to have a webinar soon, and we're going to post in the Coding Rooms Facebook group to get some ideas on some topics of your choice. But we want to see where I can help people with Coding Rooms a little bit more. So one of the topics could be creating assignments and using the auto grading features. Another could be live classroom lessons and tips and tricks involving that. And then a third topic possibility would be doing some GUI development with Python and Java using Coding Rooms.
Awesome. That sounds great. As we always start the podcast, we talk about product updates. I'll try to keep them short today. I just have three big ones. We're shipping a lot of new admin features into assignments, including some updates to the student gradebook, and we'll have a more comprehensive classroom-wide gradebook shipping very soon. Additionally, our IDE v2 that offers streamlined instances and a much more easy to use terminal will be shipping in the coming days. We've been working really hard to make sure that that's flawless before we release it. And then we're also working to put together our beta program for plagiarism detection, and thank you all who filled out the survey for that. Without further ado, I'd like to jump into the main topic for today with Joe, teaching computer science remotely during COVID, which is of course kind of a challenging topic to discuss for a number of reasons. And I appreciate you taking it on, Joe, because it is kind of hard to talk about for a lot of people. And this is now something that we're almost a year in, losing track of how many months.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, but certainly longer than any of us, I think realistically in March, thought we would be in this. And we're going to cover a lot about this today, but I'd like to start in March 2020. Can you take us back to that time and can you describe a little bit how you were teaching before COVID and what the initial days of the transition were like for you?
Absolutely. So before COVID, and the stay-at-home orders, I had this, beautiful computer lab with Windows 10 machines, graphic cards, dual monitors. My students would come into this lab, and we would have, really great class time, and they had all the resources they needed to really participate in my curriculum. And then we went remote, and all students had at their home was a Chromebook. And to add on to this, so when we talk about the first days of COVID, my son was born on the last day of in-person instruction, Friday, March 13th, Friday the 13th, that a lot of the stay-at-home orders started. My son was born that day, so he will always have that under his belt as a way he came into this world. But it made my first days of COVID a little chaotic. But what I had to do essentially was I had to switch to an online IDE. I had to find a way for my students to be able to continue their programming assignments and ways for us to work through our curriculum in purely in-browser environment. Especially one of my classes, my 11th grade course, they were starting to move into a unit with Python tk-enter GUIs. And I needed some way that I was going to be able to continue to do that curriculum, and they were going to be able to do GUI development just with in-browser tools, which really there aren't many out there that can do that, as a number of people probably know. So I'd used Replit for a few years doing my web development unit. They had come out with some GUI support in tkinter and pygame and Swing with Java. So I decided to go in and start working with that. Students could open it on Chromebooks. I had some of my students that only had Chromebooks at home kind of using that for some of their assignments anyway. So we transitioned to that. But students, they complained about the speed that the programs would compile on Replit, and especially the performance with the GUI. So the tkinter unit ended up being a little more painful. But we did our best, and we worked through the curriculum for the year.
Interesting, interesting. And do you think that for the most part, all your students were using the IDs that you recommended, or were a lot of them actually kind of going off on their own, trying to find different stuff?
Yeah, so I think almost all of them were using the IDs that I recommended. A number of them that had their own Windows machines and Macs continue to use. We were using VS Code in my actual lab for a lot of the work. A lot of them, so some of them did continue to do that, but I would say 75%, maybe more, just ended up using their Chromebooks with Replit, or and other than the hardcore, ones that said I'm gonna continue to use these things. So.
I see. And as far as like submissions and actually the synchronous part, the remote virtual classroom piece, if you will, how was that impacted?
Yeah, so that really became a challenge for me also, as when we were in person, I could do some different things where sometimes we would do some maybe gallery walk style things with some projects, and some other ways for me to be able to assess and evaluate projects in assignments. So I really started to see that flaws in my curriculum, in my way of assessing student work. And I started to discover that I really needed to find better ways to do this. So, I mean, what I did in that point is Replit did allow me to, have the students generate a share link that they could give me. And then the other students were still sending me some of their files and or delivering their code to me on the assignments still.
And at your school, do you guys use something like Canvas or Google Classroom?
Yeah, so what I use is Microsoft Teams. So the students, its education feature allows me to still create assignments, and students can attach work to it. So they were doing it that way. But it still was just a clunky system, and the students could feel it, and I could certainly feel it when it came to evaluating students' work.
I see. And as far as the sort of extra time burden on you, I know it might be challenging to quantify it, but broadly speaking, do you think that you spent more time on these types of admin tasks and work and issues than pre-COVID?
Absolutely. So even to this point in time, during this entire pandemic, what school's been like since that, March, starting at home orders, I just feel like it's, consumes much more time evaluating student work, developing work for them in these different environments, hybrid, in person, online, just purely online, and so many other things.
Interesting. So we talked a little bit about the challenges that are related to just kind of the coding piece of things when we're teaching computer science. But I'd be really interested to know, what are the other big challenges, right? Not just the tech side of things.
Yeah, absolutely. There's certainly many tech challenges that we face, but other challenges are really student motivation, and all kinds of other aspects with social emotional well-being of the students during this pandemic, students being sick and missing out on class. So there are a number of challenges with students being able to attend, participate class throughout this, with a number of things that are going on with their family and themselves.
I see. Would you categorize that as probably the biggest challenge?
I would say that's the biggest challenge. So number one is definitely just how everyone's feeling throughout this entire pandemic. And then number two would be the tech challenges of just now everybody's in their homes. I no longer had my computer lab that I get to configure and make sure everything runs perfectly on. Everyone's on their own machines,
I see.
remote and through Zoom.
Actually, a question that just came to mind: do parents get involved in any of the coding? Is that, I mean, because I guess before in the lab, they're not there, but now.
Well, certainly. So I'm not sure. I didn't hear about any parents necessarily doing that, but that could be an issue. So now, and across subject areas and grades, definitely teachers are seeing more of unauthentic assessments of the students because we don't really know who's doing the work.
Mhm.
They can more easily have a friend do it, work with a friend. So we're not getting as much as an authentic snapshot of their learning with some of the different assessments.
Mhm. And just kind of playing devil's advocate here, but do you think that's a bad thing, sort of categorically, or is it a more nuanced issue?
So it really depends on the task. So I'm sure you can think of some things in school that it's like it doesn't really matter. But when it comes to just thinking about my classroom specifically, when I give a programming task, let's just say an end of unit project, where I really want students to demonstrate that they understand and are able to, work with the skills that they were taught in the unit. I want them to be able to create the project. Um, and what that assessment's supposed to be is what that project's supposed to be is their demonstration that they have those skills, and their grade is supposed to be a numeric representation of that. So, if it's unauthentic and it's not really their work, it's not a true measure. And so that upsets me as a teacher.
Mhm. And I guess, would you say that that's black and white, or there's kind of a spectrum to that?
Definitely a spectrum to it.
See.
So you definitely have students that on one end completely doing all of their work on their own, and they're doing really well even during these times of with the pandemic. Then you have students on the other end that the only work that they're completing are things that they're able to cheat on, or uh, submit something that's completely unauthentic.
I see. And attendance wise, have things kind of been a little more stable, you would say, in 2021 academic year? Like, are students generally attending class on a consistent basis and all that kind of stuff?
Absolutely, yeah. In the spring, when we first went into pandemic mode, with the stay-at-home orders, I would say attendance was really bad. We customized our schedule and did some different things with our school, as many schools did across the country, but still students weren't coming to class, and school was a little more of a joke to students because of it was just an unprecedented time, and it was different. This school year, we're definitely seeing better attendance. It has gone up and down with different times. With the spikes in November, December, we definitely saw a dip in attendance. But that could be because the students were having more health issues as well as their families. So you can't blame them as much. But I'm seeing a renewed energy here in January. So I'm really hoping for a really great 2021.
Awesome, awesome. Um, a little bit more on this student engagement problem, because I think it's something that we're coming back to a lot. Are there any specific strategies, especially as it relates to computer science, that you're employing to keep students more motivated, excited, and engaged?
Yeah. So one of the things over the summer I really worked on after like my lessons learned from going remote and doing this remote teaching. I said there's got to be better ways to do some of this stuff. So I did a lot of research over the summer, attended a lot of conferences, webinars, and all that stuff because we were home and nothing better to do anyway. So I started to improve my teaching. One of the tools that I discovered that really allowed me to actively engage students during a lesson is called Nearpod. And actually, Computer Science Teachers Association has worked with them a little bit. They've been partnering with Computer Science Teachers Association. I never would have thought at first glance this would help with computer science education. But essentially what Nearpod allows you to do is you can take your lesson slides. So if you have a slide deck, PowerPoint, Google slide, that goes along with your lesson you're doing with students. This allows you to embed formative assessment, assessment things, questioning, into your presentation and allow for 100% participation with your students. So I've really enjoyed this because the class of old will say, you would typically call on one student. I'd say, Sasha, and I'd ask you a question, and I'd get, and oh, Sasha's getting the lesson, and I can pulse another student. And you go around and you question one student. This allows me to question the entire class, or create these small tasks in the middle of my lesson to get a pulse on the class and essentially poll them and see a response from everybody. It also keeps everybody engaged. So in class, when we would have normal classes before all this, I could always, you walk near a kid that's fallen asleep. You do different things as a teacher to ensure that everyone's staying engaged in your lesson. Online, with the cameras off on a video call, I'm not sure if they're engaged. These type of tools where I can, every 5 minutes, get a pulse of them makes it so they have to stay engaged. They're actively participating in the lesson and asking questions. I'm asking questions and they're responding, and I'm making sure that they're understanding the lesson.
You brought up an interesting point with the videos. So are there any rules at your school about requiring video, stuff like that?
No, not at all. We have had heavy conversations, and if you go to any online forums, Facebook pages, etc., teachers have been talking about this since March. It's a frustration point. It can be, because you want to engage, you want to see your students' faces, you want them to engage with you in that way. It's how we just naturally want to communicate and engage with individuals. But what we ended up talking about a lot at my school, and other individuals have, is there are a lot of things going on in different students' homes, and to really respect the privacy of students and just respect their decision to have cameras off or on, we left it open to them. What we tried to do is, we've done a couple campaigns at my school to try to really engage the students and say, hey, we want to see your faces. We want to talk to you. We want you to have your cameras on. And some students do, but we have no policies to force them to have them on.
What would you say is sort of average engagement rate then with cameras?
For cameras,
Yep.
it's low, 25% of the class maybe.
Okay.
Some days, and it really depends on the day. Some days, nobody with their camera on.
I also figure maybe in the mornings you have fewer people with cameras and stuff.
That's what they say. Period 1 and 2, you don't see as many cameras on.
I see. I also wonder, I guess if you're working on coding, just having your video on might not be super exciting.
Yeah, and so for me personally, it doesn't affect me as much. Definitely some lessons, it makes it feel a little bit better. But when we get into it and we're doing some live coding examples, and we're running, we're running code and we're talking through some different problems, it doesn't matter as much. It's more about being able to turn the mic on and off and have a conversation. And visually, what we're looking at more is the code and the slides that we're kind of going over that guide our lesson.
And since we're on the topic of the live classroom, the synchronous part, what are you doing to secure your classrooms, or has that been an issue at all for you?
So you mean secure your classroom from
either
Zoom bombing type of thing?
Yeah, either external parties, or actually, I mean, I don't know if this is a problem for you at all, and I'm kind of leaning on the side of it's not for you, but the students tampering with stuff.
Yeah, so one of the things that I will absolutely praise Microsoft Teams on is when setting up your team, your class in there, really does secure it down to only allow access for those individuals in the class at that time. So the way you're able to schedule meetings, it works really well. So that's been a benefit to me. They also released, different features for teachers where, I can designate myself as the presenter and their attendees, where I have a little bit more control and they don't have so much control of screen sharing, etc., which Zoom has those type of controls also. So I've been really lucky. I think a number of students are afraid that I have some kind of other magic powers of technology that I would destroy them if they try to bother me too much. So I've been really lucky. To be honest, a strange thing is I've only been part of a Zoom bombing one time type of thing. It was in a Zoom call for some presentation. It was fairly recently, only a month ago. So all of these months, and only last month I experienced it, and I felt really bad for the presenter, and I tried to talk them through it. So that's been pretty good for me.
That's great. That's great. I wasn't sure whether or not that all that stuff was still going on. So
for some people it is. Supposedly some teachers, definitely some that are less tech savvy, I think, have more issues. And some of the students know they can play around with those teachers more. So I feel bad for them.
Yeah, that's definitely challenging. But I think we are, and at least at Coding Rooms, we try to do secure by default, which kind of, it's honestly bitten us a little bit, because some teachers are confused. Well, how come I set up a classroom, and how come I can't just let random people who aren't logged in join?
Yeah, exactly. So
Oops.
I've enjoyed that with Coding Rooms, because even just having from one class to another class, I rather them not, jump into another room. So that hasn't been a barrier for me. I rather it be a secured thing tied down to one specific class, and one class has access to those type of things.
Yeah, that's definitely been our approach. I feel like we can kind of accept a few usability issues for the greater good, if you will.
Yep.
One other kind of random thought I just had, you're in Rhode Island. It snows there for a bit, right? Do you think we're gonna have snow days ever again?
It's a great question. So we did have one storm so far. It was a good one. So there were a good amount of inches on the ground. I forget the exact total. And we did not have a snow day. And that seems to be, so our Commissioner of Education here in Rhode Island said, no more snow days. We can do online, learning those days. And that's what we did. And so the majority of schools did that. There were some schools that made public statements. The school committees came out and said, we're continuing snow days. We want the students to be able to go outside, have a little fun, help their neighbors out and shovel, etc. So some schools held their ground. My school, we were online. We did what we'd call a synchronous class, where students went from period 1 to period 2 to period 3, just doing it online video calls.
I see. I guess you can go on after school then.
Yeah.
And I guess they do add up in some places. I went to school, high school in Michigan, so I remember for a number of school days a year, and they just end up getting tacked on anyways, right?
Yeah, so the snow days, you don't technically miss out on your 180 required school days, because they get tacked on at the end. What they're hoping for with this is, now they won't get tacked on. These online days count as an actual school day in the required amount of school days. So you won't lose your summer break now, or days in that, by tacking them on at the end of the school year. I'm not sure what I even prefer, so I can't blame some students for being upset.
Yeah,
even
definitely.
Teachers celebrate the snow days a little bit.
I always wondered about that.
Yeah.
So back to tooling a little bit. We talked a lot about video conferencing, Zoom, Microsoft Teams. When it came to the coding piece, I know you use Coding Rooms today. I know there was a time when you didn't.
Yeah.
Can you walk us through that a little bit?
Absolutely. So I'd mentioned doing a lot of professional development during the summer times, because I wanted to improve my practice, and especially when it came to programming in these virtual environments, and allowing my students to have access no matter the device they were on, and for me to be able to receive submissions more easily. So GitHub was doing a big push for their classroom product, and I've been on and off with doing GitHub things in my classroom throughout the years. So I said, this is a really great way that I can do GitHub with the students again. And so I bought into it. And then they had IDE support with Replit. So with a single click of a button, you could open your GitHub classroom repository with Replit. So I said, this makes a lot of sense. That's what I was using. So I started to do that. For the start of the year, September, we were doing that. Students were all signed up, and it worked, but it just felt like something was missing. It still wasn't the perfect workflow for us. And students would occasionally, they dealt with it, but they would occasionally say, like, this is going to be easier type of thing. So I started to use coding rooms, and my excitement for the platform came from two things. One was everything wasn't feeling comfortable with what we were doing still. I had students forget to commit and push back to GitHub, occasionally for assignments. We had hiccups like that. And students would say, they felt like there were a bunch of steps to just submit their code, to set up their projects, to just be able to run and execute their code. There had to be a better way. And then the second thing that really set me on a hunt to find a better product in the middle of a school year, because of course it's better when you start a school year with something and throughout the school year you just stick with it. But in the middle of the school year, just kind of looking for some change was GUI performance also. So I'm someone, I like to mix in those things so that students aren't just building terminal applications, and they're doing something with something a little more visual with their code. And I just wasn't getting the performance I wanted on Replit. Even when it came to something just like with Python, matplotlib, just to create a graph, I was getting these occasional assignments where the entire class it just wouldn't generate at all. And it wasn't anything to do with their code. It wasn't a syntax issue. It was the platform itself.
See. And are you using the live classrooms a lot as well?
Absolutely. So one of the things that has just improved the efficiency of our class is Coding Room's live classroom feature. This is what my students will praise the most. So if you were to sit down and you were to talk to my students about coding rooms, they would say, this is awesome. One of the challenges technology-wise was my students had small Chromebook screens. So in my classroom, when they would come into the lab, they had 2 monitors. And so they would come down, I would share my screen with them. They would see my code and what I was talking about and projecting also on their screen, as well as their environment where they were coding on another screen. And they could very easily follow along. We would have discussions, etc. This became really clunky on these small Chromebook screens. Switching between tabs, I spent time showing them how to do split screen and do some other things, but again, it just didn't work well. Now with coding rooms in the live classroom, my students are loving it, because what I do is I screen share my slides, so they have a panel for that. They have a panel where they see my coding workspace, and then they have their own coding workspace. So it's been one of the most brilliant things about coding rooms with the live classrooms, and just really can adjust the sizes of those 3 areas. And the students have said, bar none, it is the best thing when it comes to following along with a lesson.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And that's all in the remote setting. And really glad that this is helping you. How do you think you're going to continue basically when we go back to the classroom? And
yeah, so
actually, maybe I should preface that with, how are we going to go back to the classroom? What do you think about that happening?
So actually, my students right now are hybrid every other day. So I do have some students in person, and that's working, and it's also working well there. So I'm certainly envisioning, even though through these online means, some students are online, some days are online type of thing. Coding rooms, of course, it's working really well. But I have students now coming into my lab, and instead they're connecting their Chromebook or whatever laptop they want to use, either the school issued Chromebook or their own, connecting it to an extra monitor in my room and doing that. Or they're at home and they still just have their one screen. And I think I'm going to continue with that trend. So coding rooms and that whole idea with a live classroom, I don't think it's just a fad with having this online platform. That setup still works extremely well in a live class in person.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think is different about the live classroom in person than remote online?
So I would say the only difference is really they're hearing my voice in analog, and it's not going through the computer. So I'm actually in the room with them. One of the things that I really like about coding rooms when it comes to a platform where you can deliver your computer science curriculum is that it does focus on the live teaching. I think a lot what we've been losing out on is most platforms really support independent learning. It allows you to design a curriculum where students can kind of explore it on their own, but it doesn't enhance your live teaching. the live classroom part of coding rooms actually enhances your live teaching, or the
Mhm.
way that you can deliver a lesson. I don't see other platforms really having that. So that was what I was impressed with and what I really loved.
I see. Yeah, it's interesting because that entire idea for the live classroom came out of teaching workshops where I would have, honestly, when I was in high school, but this kind of kept going, was that like I teach a little workshop on some technology, and just like, first of all, no one has anything set up. So that's always, if you're going to do a 30-40 minute workshop on some cool technology, and they spend 20-30 minutes trying to install everything, that's pretty much nukes your entire plan,
Exactly.
workshop plan. But then it was just a lot of nodding faces,
Hmm.
like, do you guys get it? And then
Hmm.
walk around. And of course, those nods were not highly correlated to actual success. So I was never sure if that's because I'm just a bad teacher, or if that's kind of a more or less kind of a structural issue with teaching computer science. Um,
Yeah. So no, I would say, you know, it wasn't a knock on your teaching. You probably did a nice job. That's very common.
mhm,
And so as people develop as teachers, you kind of get a pulse where you can just look at a student and understand it more. So that definitely helps in the live area. But that's another aspect of the live classroom that, other than just the views, being able to easily access my students' code. So Replit in GitHub Classroom, it allowed me to do that. I could access my students' code, but it wasn't in the same kind of interface that Coding Rooms has. I had a nice list of all my students that are logged into my live classroom. I can quickly see a little flag if they just ran their code and they're getting an error message, which gives me a little hint when I see a bunch of little red symbols that I need to check on something, or I did something wrong myself.
mhm,
um, but also I can just kind of click and their workspace opens up and I can check out their issues. And never have I had more efficiency for when a student says, Mister, I have an issue, then I could just quickly click a button and just go over and check out what's going on. So it has, and that's what I think coding rooms, when you asked, how, beyond this, in the this COVID pandemic and in this new normal, how does coding rooms and all these things continue to exist, and what's it going to look like? These products, these tools that these innovations in during the pandemic, I think are going to exist past this, because I think, and hopefully what I'm seeing, so hopefully other teachers are seeing it, is it's making our teaching more efficient, which can allow for students to learn more and to be more successful.
mhm. I see. I see. One kind of challenge we've had with coding rooms and the awesome adoption that we've had in K-12 computer science has been, how do we position our product for teachers? How do we get them to understand that when you teach with coding rooms, and I don't want to sort of sound prescriptive, but it's a bit of a different teaching methodology, if you will, right? So there are tools like Socrative, for example, and that kind of, in the name, they imply kind of the methodology with which you're supposed to employ this tool. And coding rooms kind of operates in a similar way, where we kind of inject it into your live teaching, and you're with coding rooms, you do something that you either weren't able to do previously, or there are a handful of workflows that you previously would, walk around, screen share, kind of back and forth, that now we kind of multiply across your class and optimize. Um, how would you describe that to another teacher?
Absolutely. Certainly hard to find specific, the perfect words for it. So I can understand if you guys are having a hard time getting the catchphrase down, because there's a lot going on there. But it is, it just allows you to be the most efficient with being able to check on student work. Exactly what you said, with no matter the environment, remote, in person, I can see and I can interact with my students in a programming environment like, like you couldn't before. Some people may be able to think of it as with Google Docs. They can very easily get into some of their students' work collaboratively, etc. Now I have in a even more efficient dashboard than Google Docs. So if people are, loving Google Docs and all those things, now I actually have, if you had a dashboard of all your students kind of, and be able to monitor them and in one click, just kind of open up their page and be able to like edit with them an essay, let's say. This is what we have with Code. We're able to very quickly jump right into your students' work with them, speak with them, without having to. One of the things that computer science teachers I think can relate to is the awkward kind of reaching over your students to kind of help them with something, you know what I mean, when you walk up behind them, or in COVID, sharing the germs of their mouse or something like that, or just speaking with them, which is a great thing also. But I think being able to, from your computer, talk through an issue with them, highlight, and be able to like show them, see, this is the line I'm talking about, and talk through it for them to fix it is even better.
I see. Cool. What can we do better in our live classroom?
Ooh, that's a good question.
That wasn't a planned question for today's discussion,
Yeah.
so can't blame you.
Caught me off guard there. No, so I mean, I've been jotting down notes, and there are some other things. One thing that's come to mind quick, just because of what I'm teaching right now, because I'm teaching some drawing primitives with Python as some work with the students to get them interested in be able to see GUIs a little earlier on in their skills. So one thing I would like is a way for the students to be able to, or for the teacher to be able to show the instructor's desktop, their workspace desktop, the instance desktop, a little more easier than me having to stop the screen share and share that, or for every student to click on and view my desktop and move my little window around and stuff like that. So that would be a cool thing, that not only of a default view for the students to see the presentation workspace, but also the presentation desktop, without just a view of it too, without messing around and clicking on things on me.
Okay, I see. Yeah, like a preview.
Yeah, just a little preview
tiny
of it,
window.
similar to if I did a screen share, where it would just be a preview, and that's what I've done. So my workflow has been a little bit, I talk through something, I say, all right, and if I wanted to point out details, I'll just stop my screen share with my slides if I had lesson slides up, and instead I would share that desktop view of the GUI running.
Awesome. I think we'll definitely be able to work on that. That's part of our new IDE work. So we've talked a lot about your journey from before COVID, the initial stages, and now teaching nearly a year into this lockdown. We've heard a lot of talk about COVID. COVID is many things, but sort of among them, a digital transformation catalyst. It's kind of an industry buzzword, but I think it's rooted in trends that we are sort of, it's impossible not to see, right? Some people have described COVID bringing organizations half a decade to an entire decade into the future in terms of tech adoption. So do you think that all the hype around these new solutions will be able to fundamentally change anything about the way we adopt tech in the classroom and about the way we integrate tech in how we teach?
I do. I really think that this is going to change things. And it's mainly because of, the school I teach at, Davies Career and Tech, I was actually a student of, so it's my high school alma mater. One of the teachers I directly work with, who teaches the electronics portion of our pre-engineering program, he was my teacher, and he's an old timer, and he would be okay with me saying that. He was less like, adopted technology a little bit less. As we started to, do things with Microsoft Teams, he was putting some assignments on there, et cetera. This is pre-COVID. So he was interacting a little bit, but he didn't want to learn, the technology and all these bells and whistles and cool tools that you could use. I will say that he has, as well as a number of my colleagues that kind of shied away from technology, they have adopted it more. And of course, they've been forced to, but they're seeing how effective using some of these tools are and how it can change the efficiency of the way they teach and the way that they assess students. And so he has told me a couple times now, wow, I'm continuing to use this. Even after this is all over, these tools are going to be helpful. So I think we're going to see that this adoption just wasn't a fad. The teachers are going to continue to use these tools. And I'm seeing a lot of innovation in my school and adoption of technology. We've adopted some VDI solutions at my school that we're starting up. I think that's going to continue, and that's going to help students on their Chromebooks be able to access software that they weren't before. And a number of things that, because of COVID, we were pushed over the edge finally to move in the right direction, to give teachers and students the tools necessary to use and leverage technology to benefit the classroom.
Mm-hmm. Awesome, awesome. Do you have any parting advice for teachers and maybe why coding rooms could be a great solution for them?
Yeah. So, of course, Sasha's invited me here to this podcast, and this is a Coding Rooms podcast. But truly and honestly, I'm not lying. My students are loving Coding Rooms. They really are. They have praised since we've switched that their class is just running so much more efficiently. They feel it's their workflow is smoother and easier. They're loving the assignments and the way that they submit, and the way that they can receive feedback from unit tests and other automated things. They love the live classroom, and they feel like I'm seeing already a little bit better performance on some assessments because of, I think, the live classroom. And they're certainly are saying that they're able to understand the concepts and follow along with a lesson so much better. So it's really working. And my parting advice would be to try it out, to try Coding Rooms, to look for tools that help with the efficiency of assessing your students' knowledge and skills. So even beyond Coding Rooms, just look for these things. You won't regret it in the end. And Coding Rooms really pays attention to the details that students and teachers need to be successful in a CS classroom. And that's what I would say and praise Sasha in the platform with, is that Sasha and the team have taken feedback from me directly. So I'm just speaking from experience, as well as other teachers I've interacted with that are using Coding Rooms. And they're looking to really have this platform be something that's great for teachers and students. And works for actually teaching and not just hosting a curriculum or using it as a developing environment, but actually improves your teaching.
Awesome. That's really exciting to hear. Makes all the hard work feel worthwhile to hear comments like that. And I think I can definitely provide a little bit kind of context from the Coding Room side about all of this, which is that I'm actually 20 still, so I'm not super far out of high school and university life, and a lot of my friends are still in university as well. So like that experience is still really fresh in my mind, what it was like learning computer science. And it's also been really challenging to see like what teachers are having to do right now. And quite frankly, I couldn't really imagine being in high school right now. I would be really worried to see myself being in high school right now. So I feel like I have a tremendous amount I try to exercise a tremendous amount of empathy for what everyone is going through right now. And of course, that's kind of impossible. There are so many different things happening. But I can say that we are uniquely focused on the education use case, right? I think you'll find a lot of various platforms that do various different things, and they do some things well and then other things less well. And that's kind of true across the board, right? But we really optimize for teachers and students. And actually those are the only two outcomes we optimize for. So we generally work to save teachers time and headaches. We we want you to have the weekend back to do fun stuff or hang around with your family instead of just grading assignments. And then for students, we want them to be able to perform better and make computer science something that's less sort of just daunting and kind of a no-go area just because it looks complicated. And that's really all that we do. And you'll see that kind of every feature that we build typically has a very clear connection to either one or both of those outcomes. And that's honestly how we prioritize everything. It's like, and does this help teachers save time? Yes or no? Okay, no, we're not going to work on it. Does it help students? No. Okay, then we're definitely not going to work on it. You know, that's kind of how we approach things. And we're glad to see that that's helping to build a better product for educators. And we also work really hard to staff our support 24/7. So it's like with other platforms, I guess if you're working on something over the weekend, you might not be able to get a response, or if you're hacking late at night, or they might not have live chat support at all. But we really do try to go above and beyond with that. And I've actually even solved, Python help types of problems for some teachers. And that just makes me really happy to see that we can make that kind of an impact. And we look forward to bringing that to more and more classrooms. And we really look forward to the after COVID, to be honest. I think that it's very challenging to have sort of meaningful adoption when everyone is stressed out. And it's kind
Absolutely.
of like that's that stress piece. Like when people talk about working from home during COVID, I'm like, well, you're not really working from home. Like there's a pandemic and you're stuck at home and you have to work.
That's the truth.
Right. And so I'm kind of afraid that some of these things are actually going to get a bit of a bad rap coming out of this. But that there's definitely a light at the end of the tunnel, and I'm so excited to see how teachers like yourself, and you're really, I would say, kind of at the leading edge of what's happening in K-12 computer science. That's really inspiring.
Thank you. And Sasha and I, for everyone else that's listening, we didn't have a conversation ahead of time about Coding Room's mission. I really felt that from speaking with Sasha and the team, that I can see they're laser focused on improving the lives of teachers and students using the platform. And so kudos to you, Sasha, for meeting that mission, because you can feel it when you use the platform and when you have conversations. And no joke, 24/7 support. The team's there and they respond to you. And the other teachers have said the same thing. So they're really hands-on team. And Sasha, I'll admit that was one of the reasons why I went with Coding Rooms also. So not only was the product working well with me in my tests, but I could just see the team was dedicated to improving the product and making it the best it could be.
Awesome. Glad to hear that. Thank you, Joe. Would you like to mention one last time about the upcoming podcast or webinar?
Absolutely. Yeah. So absolutely, everyone, please check the Coding Rooms Educators Facebook group. I'm going to be sending out a poll to see what the interests are going to be. So I'm really excited for this webinar. Again, the 3 topics I'll be posting on is, creating assignments and auto grading. So if you're interested in checking that out more, maybe you're somebody that is looking into using Coding Rooms possibly in your classroom. Maybe you're somebody that's using it and want some more tips and tricks. So we're looking at creating assignments and auto grading. Another topic could be live classroom lessons, tips and tricks, and ways to use the live classroom most effectively. And then also GUI development. So if you haven't used any of the libraries for making GUIs with Python or Java, and you're interested in that, Coding Rooms does a really nice job. Its implementation is the best that I've had experience with so far. So that's another topic we could check out.
Awesome. Thank you, Joe. And with that, I'd like to cap off this amazing podcast, and we'll see you all next time. Thank you.